The first step to organizing your life is to stop talking about it. Stop declaring plans that never mature. Stop explaining changes that haven't happened yet. Stop using words as substitutes for progress. The Stoics believe that every word spent without purpose weakens the soul. Speech should be a reflection of order, not a replacement for it. That's why their growth was silent. Silence to them wasn't absence, it was alignment. Marcus Aurelius would retreat in solitude every night, not to escape duty, but to return to himself. He said, "To know where you can go is more peaceful than your own soul." In that stillness, he found clarity, and clarity is the beginning of all structure. You cannot organize a noisy mind. Noise disguises itself as urgency, endless distractions, conversations, comparisons, emotions, information. But behind it all, there's only confusion. The Stoic path begins by clearing that noise, the mental clutter that keeps you from seeing what truly matters. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." He wasn't talking about geography, he meant attention. When your mind is scattered, nothing grows. Growth begins the moment you withdraw your energy from chaos. Not to hide, but to reclaim control. That's what the modern world forgets. Silence isn't retreat, it's repair. When you sit quietly, not escaping but observing, your thoughts start to reveal their patterns. You begin to notice what drains you, what distracts you, what drives you. And slowly, the mind that once felt like a stone starts to resemble a structure. The Stoics didn't chase motivation, they chased order. They didn't wait for inspiration, they built routines. They understood that you cannot have a peaceful life without a disciplined one. Peace, they believed, is not a feeling, it's a system. It is a product of an organized mind, one that knows where to place every thought and how to ignore what doesn't belong. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that a man's worth is measured by the quality of his thoughts. So he practiced choosing them carefully. When anger arose, he examined it. When fear whispered, he questioned it. And when vanity appeared, he dismissed it. Each small act of inner discipline was an act of silent organization, tidying up the soul the way others tidy a room, because the mind too collects dust when left unattended. To grow in silence is to return to simplicity. You don't need to control everything, you just need to put things where they belong. Time in its place, work in its place, rest in its place. And your emotions always under your command, never your master. The Stoic life isn't complicated, it's consistent. They didn't waste time making plans they couldn't execute. They focused on doing the necessary thing, the small act that aligns with virtue and order. That's how chaos dissolves, not through grand changes, but through small corrections, repeated daily in silence. Seneca called this tranquillitas animi, tranquility of the mind. He described it as the quiet strength of a person who knows their direction. You don't need to move fast if you know where you're going, and you don't need to announce progress when you are actually making it. Noise is for the insecure. The stable build quietly, confident that their results will speak when the time comes. But silence doesn't mean isolation. The Stoic wasn't a monk hiding from life. He lived, worked, thought, fought, but with a composed mind. He entered the marketplace like a man entering battle, aware of the chaos, but unmoved by it. He could walk among thousands and still be alone with his thoughts, balanced and centered. That's what it means to grow in silence, to remain calm even when the world is loud. To organize your life, you must first organize your attention. Ask yourself, what truly deserves space in your mind today? How much of your thinking belongs to the past, and how much is wasted imagining futures that may never come? How much energy is spent reacting to things that don't concern your path? Marcus Aurelius said, "If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it." That's not just moral advice, it's logistical advice for the soul. Do less, but do it right. Say less, but mean it. And suddenly, your life starts to breathe again. You begin to feel the weight of unnecessary things falling away. Expectations, arguments, illusions of control. And beneath all that noise, you find the stillness that was there all along, waiting for you. The Stoics didn't invent peace, they uncovered it. It was buried under clutter, not lost. And when you stop feeding the unnecessary clarity, it emerges like a stone, rising above muddy water. In that clarity, you see your life differently. You realize that most problems are not external, they're organizational. You've been trying to fix situations instead of managing yourself. You've been trying to control the people instead of controlling your attention. And once you correct that mistake, chaos begins to lose its grip. Because the moment you master your focus, you master your fate. So if your life feels scattered, start by being quiet. Turn off the noise. Stop announcing every plan. Stop arguing with every doubt. You don't need an audience to change. You need solitude to understand. And when you understand, everything starts to fall into its place naturally. Not through pressure, but through peace. And that's why the Stoics thought the silence is a form of strength. That's how you conserve energy. It's how you see clearly. It's how you rebuild. Because growth doesn't need applause, it needs order. And order begins in stillness. So grow quietly, rebuild quietly, and let the calm within you become louder than the chaos around you.
You cannot build peace on chaos, and you cannot grow in silence if your days are disorganized. Silence is not just about the absence of noise, it's about the presence of rhythm. The Stoics led by rhythm. They understood that a calm life is not accidental, it's engineered. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome, responsible for armies, laws, politics, and crises, yet his mind remained ordered. That's why the Stoics treated emotion not as feeling, but as infection, because he treated time like a sacred resource. He woke before dawn to write, not because he wanted to be productive, but because he wanted to be present. He began each day with clarity, asking himself, what's mine to do today and what's not? That single question is enough to organize a life. The Stoics didn't measure success in results, they measured it in consistency. They knew that a single act of virtue, repeated daily, creates peace far deeper than any victory that depends on luck. Seneca said, order and method make the time long. He meant that structure multiplies life. When you give your hours a purpose, they expand. When you wait them, they vanish. To live in disorder is to be at war with yourself. You may not see the battle, but you feel it. The unease, the fatigue, the frustration of promises never kept. Every unfinished task is a broken commitment to yourself. And the Stoic considered that kind of inconsistency the most dangerous failure of all, not failing others, but failing your own reason. That's why discipline, to the Stoic, wasn't punishment, it was respect. Respect for time, respect for attention, respect for the soul's need for structure. He didn't fill every moment with activity, he gave each moment meaning. He worked when it was time to work and rested when it was time to rest. No chaos, because when life is in order, emotion stops leading and reason returns to the throne. The modern world has forgotten this art. We glorify being busy, not being balanced. We fill our calendars but neglect our character. We talk about goals but ignore habits. The Stoics would look at us and ask, if your soul is cluttered, what are you organizing on the outside? They would tell us, if your room is messy, your routine is reactive, and your thoughts are scattered, no planner, no system, no advice can help you. The work must start with the mind. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That is silent discipline in one line. Decide who you wish to become, and then live as if you already were that person. No talking, no waiting, no pretending. Just daily alignment between who you are and who you're trying to be. Every action becomes a quiet declaration of identity. When you begin to live that way, simplicity returns. You stop wasting effort on what doesn't belong to you. You stop trying to control things you never owned. You stop seeking approval for work that only needs to satisfy your conscience. And little by little, life begins to organize itself, not because everything gets easier, but because you finally stop making it harder. The Stoics lived according to three core pillars of order: clarity of purpose, constancy of effort, and calm under change. Clarity removes confusion. Constancy eliminates laziness. Calm dissolves chaos. Together, they form a life where everything has a place and nothing is wasted. That's what Seneca called vita composita, a composed life. Not a perfect life, but one arranged according to reason. To build that, you don't need perfection, you need repetition. You don't have to fix everything at once. You only have to fix what is yours today. Clean one corner of your space. Finish one promise you've postponed. Choose one habit that aligns with your nature and keep it. Then tomorrow, repeat. That's how silent growth works, not in leaps, but in rhythm. Every disciplined act, waking early, thinking clearly, speaking less, working deeply, becomes a form of meditation. Not spiritual escapism, but practical stillness. The Stoics didn't run from responsibility, they just refused to let it own them. They organized life not by force, but by philosophy. They knew that if the mind is calm, order will follow naturally. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about returning to yourself. Whenever the world became loud, he retreated inward, not to escape, but to restore balance. He treated inner silence like others treat home, because the one who keeps returning to himself never loses direction for long. Every setback becomes a small detour, not a disaster. To grow in silence, you must learn to forgive your own chaos. The Stoic doesn't chase a perfect routine, he builds an honest one. He understands that failure is part of rhythm. Missing a step doesn't mean you've lost the song. You just return calmly again and again until order becomes your nature. That's what discipline looks like when it's purified of pride, not performance but patience. So, when you feel lost, don't search for more motivation. Search for rhythm. When your mind feels heavy, simplify your tasks until peace returns. When life feels loud, move quietly until you hear yourself again. Because the Stoic doesn't conquer the world by noise, he conquers himself by order. And when the mind is ordered, the world can no longer disorganize you. That's the secret of silent discipline. You don't talk your way into peace. You organize your way into it, step by step, until calm is no longer something you practice, it's something you are. Now some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. You can't organize your life if you keep saying yes to everything that destroys your peace. The Stoics called this the disease of distraction, the slow death of the soul caused by excess. Excess of obligations, excess of possessions, excess of desires. And the cure was simple, though not easy: say no. Seneca wrote, "If you wish to be loved, love yourself enough to be worth loving." He meant that peace requires boundaries, limits that protect what is sacred within you. A man who cannot say no is not kind, he is enslaved. He spends his days pleasing others, apologizing for his existence, and wondering why he feels so empty. The Stoic refuses that fate. He doesn't reject the world, he simply refuses to live by its noise. He filters every request, every relationship, every pursuit through one question: does this serve my purpose or distract from it? If it serves, he embraces it fully. If it distracts, he lets it die. That is not coldness, it's clarity. Because to care about everything equally is to care about nothing deeply. Marcus Aurelius said, "You will never master yourself until you stop letting the world set your priorities." He wrote those words as emperor, surrounded by power, flattery, and constant demands. And yet he guarded his attention like a soldier guards a fortress. He knew that every yes has a cost. Every time you say yes to something meaningless, you say no to something essential: your rest, your order, your peace. The Stoic doesn't measure his worth by how much he gives, but by how deliberately he gives it. This is where most people lose their lives, not in tragedy, but in overcommitment. They fill their calendars with noise and call it productivity. They chase approval disguised as obligation. They confuse being useful with being used. And when the soul collapses under the weight of too much, they wonder why they feel lost. But the Stoic knows saying no is not selfish, it's sacred. It's how you guard your reason from being diluted by chaos. It's how you ensure that your time belongs to your principles, not to the demands of others. Seneca warned, "No man was ever wise by chance." Wisdom requires selection. You must choose what enters your mind, what occupies your time, what consumes your energy. Because the unexamined yes is the root of all exhaustion. Growth in silence demands subtraction before addition. You don't start by doing more, you start by doing less. Less noise, less drama, less indulgence in things that don't move you closer to virtue. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He knew the price of focus. To live simply is to confuse the crowd. To live quietly is to appear strange. But the Stoic accepts this solitude gladly because he knows that peace is worth misunderstanding. Minimalism for the Stoics wasn't about owning less, it was about needing less. They didn't run from pleasure, they just refused to depend on it. They practiced voluntary discomfort, fasting, sleeping on the floor, walking in silence, not to punish themselves, but to prove that comfort doesn't define them. Because a man who fears discomfort is not free, and a life built on comfort is a life that falls apart the moment reality gets difficult. To organize your life, you must declutter both your space and your mind. Look around. How many things do you own that do not serve your peace? How many thoughts do you entertain that do not serve your purpose? The Stoic cleanse both. He removes the physical and mental dust that collects over years of unconscious living. And in that emptiness, he finds energy again. Because space is power, it allows reason to breathe. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "If it is not necessary, it is not good." He lived by that rule. He didn't chase every idea, every pleasure, every opportunity. He learned to say no, not out of fear, but out of mastery. He knew that chaos begins the moment you start treating everything as important. The wise man knows what to ignore. So ask yourself, how much of your exhaustion is self-inflicted? How many things have you said yes to that don't align with your nature? How many tasks, relationships, or routines are you maintaining out of guilt instead of purpose? If the answer is too many, then you're not disorganized. You're overextended. And the cure is not doing more. It's reclaiming your no. Seneca once said that life is long enough if it's well lived. But most people live long only in years, not in awareness. They fill their days with trivial tasks and call it survival. The Stoic lives differently. He invests his time the way others invest gold, carefully, deliberately, with the awareness that every coin spent is gone forever. That's why Stoic organization is not about perfection, it's about protection. Protect your time. Protect your focus. Protect your calm. These are not luxuries, they are necessities. Because without them, your soul becomes scattered across things that were never yours to carry. So, say no. Say no to noise, to obligation, to comparison, to vanity. Say no to people who drain your strength and to thoughts that steal your peace. Say no until your life becomes quiet enough to hear what truly matters. And when it does, you'll find that saying no was not the end of anything. It was the beginning of yourself. Once the noise is gone and the unnecessary has been cut away, silence stops feeling empty. It starts feeling fertile. This is where life begins again, quietly, deliberately. The Stoics knew that after destruction must come cultivation. If you clear a field but never plant, weeds will return. If you simplify your life but never fill it with purpose, boredom and chaos will find their way back in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." This was not arrogance, it was instruction. It meant that philosophy must become motion. Virtue is not theory, it's habit. You organize your life not by planning what you'll do, but by becoming what you wish to be. For the Stoics, routine was sacred. Not the rigid kind that suffocates, but the rhythmic kind that anchors. They treated daily actions as rituals, small acts of alignment between reason and reality. Rising early wasn't a productivity hack. It was a declaration: I own my mind before the world touches it. Writing reflections at night wasn't self-help. It was purification. What did I allow to disturb me today? Where did I fail to live by reason? Each repetition turned chaos into order, not through control, but through consciousness. Seneca called this the art of daily return. He ended each day in quiet review, not to judge, but to adjust. He said, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said." That's Stoic meditation. Not escaping the world, but organizing it before sleep, so the next dawn arrives clear. This nightly honesty is where stability begins. Not perfection, but progress made visible through discipline. The modern world glorifies sudden change. The Stoic glorified steady refinement. He didn't believe in revolution, he believed in repetition. Because consistency is more powerful than intensity. Anyone can be inspired for a day. The wise are devoted for a lifetime. That's what Seneca meant when he said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The Stoic doesn't waste, he reinvests every hour into the improvement of his own soul. Constancy gives meaning to silence. Without it, stillness becomes stagnation. The Stoic fills quiet spaces with structure, simple rituals that feed reason instead of distraction. Reading instead of scrolling, walking instead of waiting, reflecting instead of reacting, working without drama, resting without guilt. That's not minimalism, it's maturity. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, constantly reminded himself that the body and the mind require different kinds of nourishment. The body grows through repetition, the mind through reflection. He balanced both. He didn't overwork or oversleep, he lived by measure. Moderation was his rhythm. He knew that too much chaos exhausts the soul, but too much control suffocates it. The wise man finds the middle, order with flow, silence with movement. To organize your life, you must stop separating philosophy from practice. You cannot think your way into discipline. You must act your way into clarity. The Stoic doesn't ask, "How do I feel about this?" He asks, "Is this right?" That single question simplifies every decision. Because feelings fluctuate, but principles endure. When you live by principle, the need for constant motivation disappears. Duty takes its place. That's how ordinary days become sacred. You wake, you work, you reflect. Not because you have to, but because it's who you are. Each act, no matter how small, becomes part of your philosophy. Even silence becomes a statement: I choose calm over chaos. I choose awareness over impulse. And through that repetition, peace stops being an experience. It becomes identity. Epictetus compared life to a role in a play. If the role is short, play it well. If long, play it well. What is yours is to act with excellence. The script belongs to another. That's constancy, showing up fully, regardless of circumstance. When things go wrong, the Stoic doesn't collapse, he adapts. He follows the rhythm of nature, not the noise of the crowd. He doesn't force peace, he cooperates with it. Routine, when guided by philosophy, stops feeling like control and starts feeling like freedom. You no longer waste energy deciding what to do. You've already decided who you are. And from that identity, action flows naturally. That's why the Stoics appeared calm even in crisis. They didn't rely on emotion to act. They relied on rhythm. But this rhythm isn't mechanical. It's alive. It bends with the day. It adjusts with the seasons. It forgives itself when broken. Because the goal is not perfection, it's harmony. You're not building a cage, you're tuning an instrument. And when your habits align with your values, your entire life begins to play in tune. Seneca said, "The wise man is never in a hurry, not because he moves slowly, but because he moves precisely." He doesn't rush to finish life, he builds it piece by piece in silence. Each moment, well lived, becomes part of a grander architecture, a structure made of simplicity, patience, and order. That's the real organization the Stoics sought, not tidy rooms or strict schedules, but a soul aligned with reason. So build your days the way the Stoics built their peace, quietly, deliberately, without need for applause. Find rhythm in the ordinary, treat every morning like a new philosophy, and every evening like a meditation. And when your life becomes structured around clarity, you'll discover something paradoxical. Discipline doesn't confine you, it liberates you. Because a mind at peace with its own order cannot be controlled by the world. That's what it means to grow in silence, to create structure not for control, but for serenity. To turn routine into reflection and duty into freedom, and to live every day as proof that philosophy isn't something you study, it's something you become. Most people want change to be seen. They want others to notice the progress, the new habits, the victories. But the Stoics lived for something different, internal victories, quiet transformations that only reason could witness. They didn't perform peace, they became it. Their strength wasn't loud, because truth doesn't need to shout. Marcus Aurelius never bragged about his self-control or his wisdom. He wrote in private, often criticizing himself more than praising his progress. He didn't need to prove calmness, he needed to practice it. That's the essence of invisible growth, when you're no longer trying to appear virtuous, but to be virtuous. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." He understood that maturity is not about appearance. It's about mastering what happens inside the mind, the place no one else sees. The Stoic doesn't seek validation because he knows that opinions can't measure progress. What use is it to be praised for discipline if your mind is still chaotic? What value is there in appearing humble if you crave recognition for it? Growth becomes real the moment you stop needing it to be visible. Invisible growth is the hardest kind because it's silent, slow, and lonely. You can't post it, you can't flaunt it, and sometimes you can't even explain it. It's the quiet process of unlearning your own weakness. It's deleting the need to be understood. It's walking away from people who bring noise into your mind without resentment or justification. It's rebuilding patience when no one thanks you for it. It's controlling anger when no one would have blamed you for losing. That's the kind of progress the Stoics lived for, moral, invisible, unshakable. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy." That's the Stoic approach to growth. He didn't preach what he couldn't live. He didn't decorate himself with virtue. He wore it through action. He knew that the more you talk about progress, the less you're actually living it. Because true growth doesn't crave attention, it creates integrity. The world today worships visibility, followers, results, image, metrics. But visibility doesn't equal virtue. In fact, the more visible your life becomes, the more fragile your peace tends to be. Every opinion becomes a weight, every compliment a trap. The Stoic avoids this dependence by choosing to grow where the world cannot see, in silence, in patience, in private resolve. Because that's where the strongest structures are built. The foundation of a temple is never visible, yet everything depends on it. You are not disrespected because others don't notice your growth. You are protected. You are free from performance. You are allowed to evolve without interruption. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be satisfied with the smallest step forward if it is on the right path." The Stoic doesn't rush, he refines. He knows that every quiet correction, every time he resists anger, every time he chooses reason over impulse, is a small victory over chaos. And enough small victories create unbreakable peace. This is the paradox of Stoic growth. The less you need recognition, the more authentic your improvement becomes. When you no longer seek proof, you begin to live with purpose. When you no longer demand progress to be visible, progress becomes inevitable. The Stoic trains in silence for the same reason. A warrior sharpens his sword before dawn, not to be seen, but to be ready. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." He saw life not as a performance, but as a workshop of the soul. He didn't fear imperfection, he feared stagnation. He didn't chase applause, he chased alignment between thought and deed, intention and action. And he knew that those alignments often happen in solitude, far from any crowd. Invisible growth also means accepting obscurity. To grow quietly, you must release the desire to be remembered. The Stoic didn't care about legacy, he cared about truth. He didn't ask, "Will they remember me?" He asked, "Will I remain true to my nature?" And in that humility, he found a kind of immortality that fame can never offer, inner harmony. The reason most people never reach peace is simple. They chase recognition instead of growth. They seek applause before mastery, but applause fades, and mastery, especially of the self, is eternal. The Stoic prefers mastery, because what is unseen can never be taken from you. A quiet mind cannot be stolen. A steady hand cannot be humiliated. A patient heart cannot be defeated. Invisible growth also requires patience, not the passive kind, but the active strength to endure discomfort without drama. It's the ability to say, "I am becoming," even when no results are visible. Because nature grows silently too. The seed doesn't shout before it sprouts. The mountain doesn't announce when it forms. The Stoic understood that true strength follows nature's rhythm, slow, constant, and silent. So, grow quietly. Let the world misunderstand you. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you've done nothing while you are rebuilding everything. You don't need to prove that you've changed. You just need to change. Because when your growth is real, it speaks without words. It doesn't need witnesses, only discipline. In the end, invisible growth is not about being unseen by others, it's about finally being seen by yourself. When you can look in the mirror and recognize calm instead of chaos, patience instead of anger, focus instead of distraction, that is victory. And no applause, no recognition, no validation could ever compare to that. That's how the Stoic grows, not loudly, but completely. Not in public, but in truth. And when the time comes for his actions to speak, the world will listen. Not because he demanded attention, but because silence made him undeniable. There comes a moment, after all the effort, when the silence you once feared becomes your peace. The same solitude that once felt empty begins to feel sacred. You stop searching for control, and instead, you begin to cooperate with life. That is the highest form of order, not to dominate the world, but to move in rhythm with it. Marcus Aurelius said, "Accept everything that happens as if you had chosen it." This is not resignation, it's mastery. It's the realization that when your mind is organized, the world cannot disorganize you. You can't control every event, but you can always control your response. And when your inner world stands firm, chaos loses its power. The Stoics believed that fate is not an enemy, but a teacher. They called it Amor Fati, the love of one's fate. To accept, to adapt, to align, not because everything is pleasant, but because everything has purpose. Even failure. The wise man doesn't resist the flow of life. He moves with it, directing his energy where reason leads and letting go where it cannot follow. Organization, then, is not just about schedules or routines, it's about agreement. An agreement between your will and reality, between your discipline and nature. When those two align, the struggle ends. You stop fighting time and start walking with it. You stop fearing change and start learning from it. And you stop pretending that peace will come someday. You start living it right now. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." He saw obstacles not as interruptions, but as instruments, tools that shape character. To the disorganized mind, life seems unfair. To the organized soul, life seems precise. Because even the difficulties have order. They arrive exactly when you need them most. This is what the Stoics mastered, turning obstacles into alignment. They used pain as practice, chaos as training, silence as medicine. And in that process, they built something far greater than a calm routine. They built harmony between themselves and the world. They learned that the more you try to control, the less peace you have. But the more you surrender to reason, the more freedom you gain. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't come from quiet rooms, but from clear minds. It's the stillness of a man who trusts his own principles. He doesn't fear opinion, loss, or failure, because none of those can touch his integrity. He knows who he is, and he knows what he stands for. That is organization at its purest, when your values are so well arranged within you that no storm can scatter them. The modern man confuses control with chaos. He fills his days with movement, noise, and goals, but remains inwardly lost. The Stoic does the opposite. He empties what is unnecessary until only what is essential remains. Then he lives according to it. Quietly, steadily, consistently. He knows that real power doesn't shout, and it's heard only by those who have learned to listen. So, if you've walked through confusion, if you've been buried under noise and unfinished plans, remember this: you are not behind. You are being refined. You are not lost. You are being cleared of what doesn't belong. Every season of silence has meaning. Every pause is preparation. Because nature too moves in seasons, and the soul follows the same law. When you finally embrace this rhythm, you begin to feel time differently. You stop rushing towards some imagined future and start mastering the present moment. That's what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "Confine yourself to the present." He didn't mean to shrink your dreams, he meant to root them. Because all order begins now, not later. And all peace begins within, not elsewhere. In the end, the Stoic doesn't seek a life free of problems. He seeks a life free of confusion. He knows that even when the path is uncertain, his principles are not. Even when the noise returns, his silence remains intact. Even when the world changes, his rhythm endures. Because he has built his life not on emotion, but on reason, not on attention, but on virtue. That's the final lesson of silent growth. You don't organize your life to impress anyone. You organize it to honor yourself, to live with precision, to speak less and mean more, to love your fate and waste nothing of it, to grow without noise and to move without pride. Because when the world looks at you and sees calm, what they're really seeing is structure, the quiet architecture of a soul that has made peace with itself. So, keep building in silence. Keep rising unseen. Keep refining your mind until your order becomes your nature. And when the noise of life tries to return, you'll simply smile. Because you've learned what few ever do, that peace isn't found by running from chaos, but by mastering yourself within it. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.